Hey YouTube, welcome back. We got a very special cook today. It's a family favorite around here. We're doing 3 slabs of baby back ribs, and we're going to use a modified 3-2-1 method. Basically, that's 3 hours on the grill, just like they are, rubbed, seasoned, all that. Then you do 2 hours in a full pocket with brown sugar, honey, and parquet. Let all that goodness set in there, and then you take them out of the foil and leave them on the grill for an hour. Now, I do use a Weber 22-inch, so 3 racks of ribs is pretty much the whole grate, but I have a little trick up my sleeve that's going to help me out with that, so I'll show you that later. First thing we're going to do is unwrap these ribs, and then we have to take off the membrane, which is basically just like a thin layer on the inside of the meat, because that's not going to cook up good. Some people take it off, some people don't. We prefer it off in this house, so I'm going to show you how is best to take that membrane off. So let me get all these out of the package, and when we come back, I'll be showing you how to take that membrane off. Alright, so we got all of our ribs out of the package. The membrane has been removed. Today we're using Weber's Casey Bbq Dry Rub. I love the flavor of Casey Bbq. It just tastes much better to me. That's my opinion. So we're just going to come over and give it a light dusting. Start on the rib cage side first. That way we can make sure we got seasoning on that, and then we can make our meaty side, the presentation side, look a little better before we put it in the smoker. Get a good coating. Don't forget the ends there. You want nice flavor all throughout. Alright, so we'll give this a flip. Look at all that meat. I know some people like the spare ribs because they look bigger, but in my opinion, you get so much more meat with a baby back, it's ridiculous. Tilt it up, make sure we get this side right here that's got all this exposed meat to it. Ooh, just enough. Alright, so I'm going to get these wrapped up in some saran wrap to sit in the fridge while I get my grill up to temp. So when we come back, I'll be putting them on the grill and show you my little trick for doing 3 racks of ribs on a 22-inch grate. So stay tuned. Alright, here we are with a slab of the ribs out of the packaging that they came in. And like I said, we got to remove this membrane, which is basically like a thin film on the inside of the rib cage. And the best way to do that is to take a butter knife and a paper towel. You're just going to take the butter knife and get up under that membrane. Best to follow along one of the bones because it's a little easier to guide it around when you're on top of a bone. You're just going to pull up on that knife using the dull end till you get enough that you can get your fingers underneath there, and then you're just going to pull that off. That's why it helps to have the paper towel, because this is going to be slippery. You can kind of get it a little bit with your fingers, but it works best to use a paper towel, and if you're really lucky, you can get it to come off in one swooping move. Which is harder than it looks to do on camera. Alright, so I got most of that off. There's still a little bit here at the top, and you can kind of tell because this looks a little shinier, whereas this looks like it's a little dull, kind of like you got wax paper in front of your eyes. So once you get all that off, then we can start seasoning up the meat and get it ready to go on our grill. We will be using the slow and sear today. If you caught my pork tenderloin video, You saw how we set that up. I will go back over it again, but there are far better videos that explain it in more detail. Anything on Adrenaline Barbecue, Dave's company, he's the one that created the Slow and Sear. Justin with Baby Back Maniac, he does a lot of Slow and Sear videos, so if you're interested in that, check them out, or just stay tuned and I'll run through it again for you. Let me go ahead and get the rest of these trimmed up, and I'll be back with you in a little bit. Alright, so here we are out at the grill, and I know that nobody's brought this up, but I just wanted to put this out there and be completely transparent. I'm in no way, shape, form, or fashion sponsored by Weber. I just enjoy their products. I spend my hard-earned money to buy them. I use a lot of their seasonings. I use a lot of their tools. You can see I have the two Webers there. The black one off to the left is actually the Ice Chest Weber from my first video that I posted. And I've always loved Webers. They're great grills to me. I love to use them. I get better performance out of them. I know there's Kamados that are nicer, but this is just what I prefer. So you just have to find something that works for you. And I do apologize about the camera. Probably a little unsteady because I'm freehanding right now. But I was just going to show you the Slow and Sear right quick. It basically fits into your Weber 22. They also make them in extra large form for the Weber 26-inch kettles. But what we got is the charcoal. I made sure to stack it, kind of leaving some open honeycomb gapping. And you can kind of see I got a little fire starter back there. What we're going to do is actually light up the fire starter by sticking a lighter into that honeycomb pattern. And that's going to allow the flame to get to it and burn. And we want to get all these coals nice and hot, so when we fill up the trough later on with fresh coals, these are already going. And it doesn't take long. You can already see there's some smoke and a little bit of a fire down there. It doesn't take a whole lot. You basically just want to get those coals nice and hot, and then it'll travel this way. You have a trough with water that we're going to put in later. It does hold 4 cups of water, so a whole quart. So once these coals get nice and hot, we'll fill that up. We do have a water reservoir right here that will hold 4 quarts of water. And then just to make cleanup a little easier, I'm going to put some tinfoil down across here so that it doesn't drip off into that. We will have a water pan sitting in there. And once we enter the final stage of the cook, because we're going to do about 3 hours out here on the grill with just the ribs, then we're going to wrap them in foil with parquet, honey, and butter and do that for 2 hours. And then the final hour, we're going to take them out of the foil, leave them on the grate, and let that glaze kind of set in. Once we take them out of the foil, any juices or anything we got in there, we're going to pour into a pan with some baked beans, and we're actually going to put that in place of the water pan. So on the last hour of that cook, we get drippings from our ribs that fall into our beans to give them a little flavor. So let me get this going nice and hot, and then we'll load up the coal on the other side, fill up our water reservoir, and get everything laid out. So hopefully we'll see you soon. Alright, so here we are back out at the grill, and I got the charcoal nice and white hot. That's what you want when you start this up. And the first thing we're going to do is take our 4 quarts of water right here and dump it into the Slow and Sear's water trough. You do want to be careful because those hot coals down there will make this spatter like it's doing. So just take your time, be careful. And there we go, 4 quarts of water in that. We do have a water pan right here that has some water in it too. And all we're gonna do is dump our charcoal into the Slow and Sear just to fill up this reservoir and get a good bit of smoke going off of it. And it does take just a little shy of a whole can of coals from your chimney starter. So now what we're going to do is take our apple wood chunks and set them throughout the coals so we get a nice good smoke development. And as you can see, it's starting to smoke a little bit on us right now. So what we're going to do is get this grate on and let this come up to temp. You want to shoot for somewhere right around 250, 275. You really don't want it too hot. I do have a tendency to let this thing kind of get away from me a little bit. So if it reaches 300, it's really no big deal. For as long as we're going to cook these ribs, it's not really going to matter. They're going to be done and awesome by the time we eat them. But you do want to do 3 hours on the grill grate with just your seasoning and rub, whatever you use to season it up. Then we're going to wrap them in foil with honey, parquet, and brown sugar, and then let that sit for 2 hours. Then after it cooks in the foil, we're going to take them out of the foil and put them directly on the grate for another hour. This is what's called the 3-2-1 method. I do modify it a little bit depending on how done my ribs get in the first 3 hours. Thing I like to do is what's called a bend test. It's basically, I'll show it to you here in a minute, but basically you just pick the ribs up about 2/3 or 1/3 of the way down the meat with your tongs, and when you see it bend and the skin starts to crackle, that's when you know you're ready to wrap. So once we get a nice bend on them, we'll wrap them up, do about 2 hours, hour and a half, 2 hours, somewhere around in there, and then we'll bring them back out on the grill for 45 minutes to an hour, just as long as it takes to get that glaze set. So we'll come back in a minute and we'll be bringing the ribs out, and I'll show you my little trick on how to get 3 slabs of ribs onto a 22-inch grate. So stay tuned. Alright, so here we are back out at the grill. You can see the temperature inside is almost 230. That's kind of where we want to be. I did close down the vents to the top vent about 1/3 of the way open, and my bottom vent is between 1/4 and 1/2, somewhere around in there. So what we're going to do is get these ribs on the grill. And the 22-inch 3 racks of ribs is kind of problematic unless you have a rib rack. Basically, you just set this on the grates, put your ribs in the slots, and it lets them sit up vertical. So for a 3-hour cook, we're going to do an hour and a half this way, and then after an hour and a half, we're going to flip them over and do them this way. So let's go ahead and get this onto our grill. Nice, good smoke coming off of that apple wood. So we're going to set that right there. I'm going to move my temperature probe back just a hair. Oops, touching the grate. Alright, now we're going to get these ribs on this rack. and we got our meatiest sides up, and then we're gonna take and flip them over about halfway through. That way they settle down, everything starts dripping down, and when we flip it back over, it's gonna run back the other way on the meat. So we're gonna let these go for about an hour and a half, and then we'll flip them over. It is about 11:30 right now, a little after, so about 1 o'clock we'll be flipping them over and letting them run the other way. So let's close this up and get this smoke going. Alright, here we are back out at the grill. It's a little past 1 o'clock, showing about 1:05, and what we're going to do is flip our ribs that are in the rack so that they can be evenly cooked. You can already see the bones are starting to poke through, and right now is a good time to do what I was talking about earlier with the bend test. Basically, you pick the ribs up and then hold them in your tongs, and when they flop over, you see how much they bend. We'll just grab this slab right here and pick it up, and you can see that it's breaking loose right here where the tongs are at, but we actually want to see it cracking right down here. So we'll go ahead and flip these over. Alright, so now that we got those flipped over, we'll let this go for another hour and a half, and that'll be our 3-hour part of the 3-2-1 method. Then we're going to wrap them up in foil, like I said, with the brown sugar, honey, and parquet, and do those for about 2 hours, depending on how well the glaze starts to take to it. And then we'll get them back out of the foil and do them just on the grill rack for an hour. So stay tuned and we'll be back shortly. Alright, so here we are back out at the grill, and I just wanted to show you the bend test real quick. You just grab your ribs about 1/3 of the way down. When you pick them up, you should see some cracking. I don't know if they're coming through on camera right there. There's a little cracking striations, means that it's time to pull these off and get them wrapped. It is about 240 right now, which is a little bit over what I thought it would take for the second go around. But now we're going to get them wrapped and in foil and put them back out on here for 2 hours. So I will meet you inside and we'll show you how to wrap. Alright, so here we are back inside, and to start our full wrap, we're going to take brown sugar and put it on our foil, and you just want to smooth this out to where it evenly covers the foil. Just knock all those clumps down, and what we're going to end up doing is flipping our ribs over to put the meat side down onto the foil with the brown sugar, honey, parquet, and our bone side is going to be up. We'll wrap this in there, put these back out on the grill for another 2 hours, let that glaze kind of set up on it. Doing it this way is what we refer to as ooey gooey style. You don't need any barbecue sauce for it, because it pretty much has its own barbecue sauce when you put the brown sugar and the honey and everything on there. You can use molasses too, but we just prefer straight up brown sugar, butter, and honey. Alright, so now that we got that, we're going to come back and hit it with some honey. I think the honey is really what puts the gooey in the ooey gooey style. And on top of that, we're just going to add some squeezy butter parquet. Now we got our meat side here, so we're going to flip that over and actually lay it on top of the brown sugar, honey, and parquet. And we're just going to fold this tinfoil over. Careful not to put too much pressure on it and have the sharp edge of these bones puncture your tinfoil, because we want to save all the juices to add to our baked beans. Spin that around. And like I said, with us trying to save all the juices, we're just going to get another piece of tin foil. Lay them over on it, flipping it over to where your meat side now is up with all the brown sugar and honey on it. Give it a roll. And this will hopefully catch all of our juices and keep them from running out. That way we can add them to our beans later. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap the rest of them up, and then we'll go back out on the grill and put these out for another 2 hours. Alright, here we are back out at the grill. I just went ahead and stirred the coals up, got rid of some of the ash, and we got our ribs wrapped in tin foil with the brown sugar, parquet, and honey. And we're just going to place them directly on the rack, making sure that that parquet, honey, and butter is at the top. And with a 22-inch, we can't use the vertical rack anymore, so it gets a little tricky as far as placement. So what we're going to actually do, since this back side where the slow and sear started is already burnt out, all the heat now is coming from right here. So what we're going to do is just rotate these around. You know, every 15 minutes or so, we'll take this one, move it to the back, move this one up to the front, and then this one will just come forward. That way it's keeping them evenly rotated, getting everything, you know, nice and evenly heated. That seems to be the best way to do it, is just to come off of where this would be very hot to where this is very safe, and then so on, just rotating them around in the same direction is what you want to do, is keep that flow going in the same direction. So we're going to shut the lid down now and let these start getting back up to temp, and hopefully it's 3 o'clock now. In another 2 hours, around 5 o'clock, hopefully these will be ready to come out of the foil, and we'll pour the juices into our beans and then let them sit on the grill just by themselves, naked is what they say. So tune back in and we'll be back shortly. Alright, we're back inside now. The ribs have cooked on the grill out of the foil for about an hour, a little close to an hour. The ribs came out looking great. We got a lot of pullback on these bones. I'm just going to go ahead and cut into one real quick so I can give you a look at the inside. And they are still hot. and perfectly cooked. You can see a nice defined smoke ring right in there. They look juicy, not dry at all. I think the parquet actually does help bring out some moisture and give it back to the meat during the cooking process. But yeah, just look at that, just juiciness. Alright, well that's what's for dinner tonight, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like, subscribe, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of this method, the 3-2-1 method, or do you like sauce on your ribs? Just drop me some comments.